Hey guys, this is Nique and Ress, and this is You with Alchemy. Today we will be talking about redefining strong.
Yeah, so when we're talking about redefine strong, what we're talking about is taking the definition of the word strong and what it used to mean to us and checking out the parts of it that are negative and replacing it with what we believe real strength is now, especially as women in our 30s. So, talking about that, being women in our 30s and how we look at the word strength now, what we believe strength is now, what did strength mean to you when you were like a teen or when you were like in your 20s?
The thing is, I don't think I ever really thought about it. I think I
Mm-hmm.
always was considered strong, but it was just you don't have a choice. So I never figured but until something like traumatic happened to me, that's when I was like, damn, I am strong. But like growing up, I don't think I ever thought about it. I just kept going. In my 20s, I just thought being strong was just I guess taking on battle. I don't know. I think my it's the same aspect of taking on battles, and like I see my dad as being strong, like taking on the family, everything that we had as a family. He took it on with strives and didn't complain or didn't ask for help. Just being a provider, I thought that was strong. And then also seeing like my mom fighting through like battles she had and keep continue to go and going for the family. I just think those are like the qualities I see was strong is just being there. I still think it's just being there for others. Like I feel like my parents were strong people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but those were like the things, or my grandma was a strong person. Just I think I'm just seeing like it's all examples of me seeing family doing for other people or family helping other people and like being the person that brings everybody together. And I always feel like these people are the strong examples that I remember in my life at that age.
I feel like my idea of what is strong has progressed over time. I think when I was younger, I looked at strength as kind of like you said, as like taking on stuff. Like if people aren't able to handle it, you just take it on.
Mm-hmm.
And you take it on without really showing how hard it is. Without really, I think I saw a lot of examples of people in my life when I was in my teens, of people who like were dealt hard cards and they took it, they handled it, they
Mm-hmm.
kept pushing when other people wouldn't. And so I think I thought that as I was a teenager. And then I think it morphed that when I became old in my 20s, I really saw strength more as a like take no shit type of thing. Like instead of like always sacrificing, that's not strength. I started looking at that as a weakness. It's like, hold on, that is making you, it's strength in a way, but it's also weakness in a way. Like it is sacrificing yourself. And sacrificing yourself is not as strong as I used to think it was. I used to think that was a strong trait. And then I think somewhere in my 20s, I started realizing how much that was affecting me. And I was like, this can't be strength. This can't be what strength feels like, because even once we're over that hurdle, I don't feel good. I
Mm-hmm.
don't feel strong. I don't feel victorious. And I know sometimes you do things that are hard and it's not like, okay, I feel victorious afterwards because it was a tough battle. Like, nah, this is a whole different level of like, no, now I feel even more defeated because even though I took on this thing, why am I always taking on things?
Yeah.
Why am I the only one taking on things? And I
Mm-hmm.
think now that I'm in my 30s, it's like that, but expounded upon, where it's like, to me, now strength is authenticity. It is, I think, so it's so hard to be authentic to yourself. We promote that, we say that, we always are like, oh, be true to yourself. And then we like bow to society, we bow to family, we bow to our careers, whatever, whatever. And there's so few people I feel like they're actually out here just living their 100% best authentic life. And I think that is strength. It is strength to be like, I know I can make six figures in business and I'm good at it, but I just really want to fucking paint. So I'm gonna go be a painter. And that takes strength. It takes strength to tell you, it takes strength to tell your family, like, which I'm not about to do anymore. Like,
Yeah.
the first time I had to hold up boundaries with my family was terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
And I consider myself a very strong person at that time, but it was like, dang, something about me changing the role in the family, because my role at that time was to just obey. Like I was a very obedient child. for the most part. I mean, the stuff they knew about, I was very obedient. And so I remember like the first time I had a set about it, that was really hard for me. And I look back now and I was like, yo, that's one of your strength moments, because they didn't even know who you were up until that point. Your parents had no idea who you were because you were playing a role. And that was very strong of you to come out and be like, no, this is actually who I am. Nice to meet y'all. And what me and myself accepts is now this. What we no longer accept is now that. And
I was just saying that you're making good points. I guess I have to relearn what strength means to me, because those things that you said do make you strong. But I don't think I take those into consideration like I should. I still feel like me holding it, I still have this past mentality right now. Like,
mhm,
me holding it down, I see that as me being strong, but it's still like, but I'm still broken, or I'm still tired, or I'm still stressed.
mhm,
And
mhm,
those things that you said are more strong than holding it down when you're completely depleted. You know what I mean?
mhm,
So I'm trying to, I guess I am in a process of like relearning what the strength means to me, because I've been saying lately, I don't want to be seen as a strong person. And I need a, not the strong person in that aspect that can take on a battle over and over and over and over again, because I don't want to be that person anymore. But it's just, for me, I think I'm relearning it, relearning how to actually have strength in yourself instead of the ways that I grew up.
strength for everybody else.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So
It's
you just made me think about that.
it's definitely an unlearning process. I feel like for young Black women, a lot of us are raised with this mentality, like you take care of everybody. We're taught very, very early, even if a parent never sits you down and directly tells you that, you're put in situations where it's made very clear to you, like that's your role.
Mm-hmm.
And this can be anywhere in the family line, because Nique, you're the oldest and I'm the baby. And we
Yeah.
both grew up with that mentality of like, okay, you take care of everybody, you make sure everybody's good. You make sure that, you don't just leave your brothers.
Yeah.
You make sure y'all, my brothers was dropping me off at grown women's houses to fight. My parents didn't know that when they were telling me this. They lucky I was a tall child.
Oh no.
um, but yeah, like things like that. And it's very, very hard to unlearn. And the only reason I learned it is because I hit my mental break point
Mm-hmm.
where it was like, I literally cannot do this anymore. This mentality, this way of thinking, this way of acting literally feel like it is killing me at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, we're going to talk about that, the unlearning process of it all. So, kind of like I said, for me, it was definitely just like life experiences that made me kind of realize, like, okay, this is not where I want to be anymore. Um, there was kind of like two incidents that really made me like really have to stop and redefine my definition of strength. One was with men, and the other was for me. But I definitely had a certain idea when it came to strength. What is a strong man? And it was some real like old school sexist type mentality. I grew up with a lot of boys, and I grew up with a dad who was like a man who was definitely born, in the 50s. My dad was very big on men pay the bills. There's no reason why you have your oil light on weeks after and you have a boyfriend. Why didn't that man
And
take you to go get
donuts
your
on your car and your gas tank empty.
Why did that man take you to go get his car? And then even my brothers, though, they were very like, don't date no punk. They were very like, first of all, if you date a punk, we gonna punk him. But they were very like, you don't let nobody just say anything to you. They were very, they will throw hands. Like they had no problem, fighting, things like that. And so even though I didn't like violent men, in my head, it was like, but you need to be able to protect me physically. And that was always a really big thing. And what happened is I dated this guy and we were out at dinner one time. And I can't remember how we got on the topic, but he was just like, look, I'm too grown to be fighting. He was like, I am going to talk my way out of the situation. He was like, but I'm not about to throw hands. He was just like, I'm a grown ass man. I'm an educated man. I have properties. I have built a certain amount of wealth for myself. For him, it was a big thing. And he was just like, I'm not about to throw away nothing on fighting nobody. So if I can't talk my way out of it, then I'm just leaving the situation. And we're having this conversation, and I'm just like, it blew my mind because I had never had a man tell me that like I am not gonna like I had never heard a man tell me they were scared to fight. I had never heard, and like he would say he was scared, but he did say he was like, I'm not a fighter. I've never been a fighter. He was like, that is not my skill. My skill is making money. Like that was his mentality. He's like, I have always been the smart one. I have always been, this is me. And I had never had a man say that. Like even men who I knew I could fight, I had never heard them out loud say that. And he said it. He was so confident in me, and I was like, oh, huh. This is fascinating. I don't know what's going on here, but I really, really liked it. And I remember telling my girlfriend, a girlfriend I used to work with about it. And she was like, I like a man that can take a punch. And I was like, and I was, no, and it's so funny because I make fun of her all the time. And so whenever we like are discussing guys that are cute, I was like, I know, your type is a man who looks like he can take a punch. And because she swears I like pretty boys. She's like, yes, you like pretty boys. But I remember like having this like conversation with her afterwards and just kind of feeling like, yo, I think my idea of like masculine energy is toxic as hell. Like I need to really re-examine it. And I didn't recognize my idea of what male strength was toxic until that moment, because I didn't date men who displayed those traits in like broad ways. Like I've dated guys who, in high school used to fight, when they were younger, like they had a rep to them type of thing. But like while we were dating, you weren't out in the street fighting, like, sir, for what? But like I knew you could if the chance arose, like that sort of thing. So yeah, like it was like the first time I really thought about it. And I was like, dang, even though like I'm not out here dating like the like paper boy from Toxicity, like dang, some of my ideas around what a man should be are actually very, very toxic. And so having that conversation with him really was like the first time I ever really even thought to examine how I thought men should even show strength.
See, like with the males, not so much. Because I dated a lot of guys who would never fight. So it wasn't like something I needed. But I think, like, going back to me, I always was like, my strength was checked. Like, example of it being like, you need to change that is when I dated somebody. Because I always have masculine energy. I always feel like I have to take care of things. I always feel like you can't do really shit for me. I have to do it myself. So I never let that person in to be the man. But I was dating my like fiance actually, and he was telling me like he checked me on that. Like, hold up, like you don't need to do all this. Can you let me be the man? And it kind of checked me on my strength. It kind of calmed me down. Like, you don't always have to do this. Like, you're going out your way to be this strong Black woman. And sometimes you really don't have to do that. And you shouldn't want to have to do it all the time. It goes back to, my mom telling me to be a strong Black woman. But it doesn't get you everywhere all the time. So I don't really remember my changing my perception of man, but I do remember changing my perception of how a woman should be. And that what I was doing was just struggle self-love to myself. It was like being your woman, like being a feminine woman, and you don't have to take on so much, like recognizing that is not what it has to look like all the time. So that's where my kind of experience changed with my outlook of thinking about just the strong Black woman that I always thought I had to be.
And that goes back to, I think though, like that's one of those things I feel like I talk about with clients all the time. That goes back to that being taught or somehow coming along the road and learning that love is control. Because when you think love is control, you'll do that. Like you'll just start doing stuff. And it's because I love you. I want this to come out as the best aspect ever. And I feel more comfortable when I do it because I don't trust you to do it. And that's looking at that love as control, which is something that a lot of us grew up with, though. A lot of us grew up with. And I could see how it came to that. I think even it's not even just like a Black woman thing, but we grew up in times where like parents were scared for us. Like parents were just like, yo, there's now serial killers on the loose. There's now girls getting snatched off the streets. People think Trayvon Martin was the first time like we had that level of police brutality, but it's not. For a lot of Black people, we knew about these type of stories since we were young, since our parents were young, since our grandparents were young. And I think because of that, I feel like for me, my parents tried to keep me in such a box
Yeah.
that they used such control to try to keep me like safe. But it just taught me that that's what love is. Like love, if I love you, I want to control you because I know better and it's safer. And I'm gonna be able to take care of this better. And
Yeah.
hmm but then you don't realize that you go into relationships and you still have this like way of operating in love.
Mm-hmm.
And so someone really calls you out on it. It's kind of like, how do I even know that that's what I'm doing?
Yeah, yeah. And it's just, yeah, you think it's right. And you don't, sometimes you don't even understand why they're not operating the way you want them to
hmm
because you're trying to control the situation.
We could be so
Yeah,
happy if you would just listen. Like, I don't
yeah,
understand.
yeah.
Why are you
We
making this
both will.
hard?
Like, why are you doing this? But yeah, yeah, somebody had to call you out on it. Or you just a self reflection thing? And half the time, I
hmm
ain't doing nobody's self reflection when I'm really in it. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But I feel like for me, the defining moment for me that like made me realize that I had to redefine strength for myself was, again, I just went through an extremely stressful period in my life, and I went through a really, really, really hard depressive episode. And I was like trying to hold through. I was dating somebody at the time. I was trying to like just hold through with them. I was trying to hold through on a job that I was starting to hate. I was trying to hold through on like the whole mom thing. And just like while going through depression, going through a depression while you are a single mother is hard. While you're a mother in general is hard. It is so hard to be depressed in general, obviously. But to add motherhood onto that, especially when you're a mother who is very aware of how your depression can affect your child and you're trying to like bubble wrap them away from any damage you could possibly do. Um, trying to fake through a smile to get through dinner, trying not to lose your temper when you don't have any energy and patience and all of that. But going through like all of that, not couldn't sleep at this time either, not being able to sleep, and just like feeling like I was about to snap on everything. And I was really feeling like I did everything right. Why is things not working? Like I went to school. I made good grades. I went to grad school. I got, one of those professions that look good on paper. I help people. I am there for my family. I am, all these different things. And I was still feeling like I was just on the verge of breaking down at any second. And that's when I was like, okay, this can't be fucking strength because this feels horrible. Like there has to be a different version of strength. And then when I really started on my healing journey and I really started like doing that shadow work, looking at myself, calling myself out, making myself go through those tower moments, making myself really fight through to get to know who I really am. After all the pain, after all the trauma, stripping all that away, who are you at your core? And what is that trauma? What is that pain? And no longer hiding from what that is, because that's not strength. That is that is living on autopilot. That's just moving on. Doing that and that, I was like, okay, no, this is what strength is, because this shit hurts and this shit is hard. But when you finish, you get through it, when you go through that triumph, when you finally face that shadow, when you finally decide to stop that generational pattern, it felt amazing. And I was like, okay, so this is what strength has to be. It's not hard, 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 horrible, horrible, horrible all the time. There's some hardness, but after you win that battle, it is like, okay, this is amazing. And it's not a shallow or superficial, oh, this is amazing. You know, won number one in the race. It's a type of amazing that stays with you.
I think I learned that, I guess, with you, like through my hardest battles, I learned
Mm-hmm.
what strength, what I thought strength was, is, keeping, it's bad, but keeping like a happy face when you're going through a whole bunch of hate, like strength. And I had to pick myself up, like, okay, like being a single mom and depressed is hard as hell, but just trying to pick myself up and trying to be present with her. And I think that's where I found new strength, or a new way of being, having strength. I did feel happy when I started to talk about my feelings and figure them out in journal, and actually taking back my peace and finding strength in that, instead of just
Mm-hmm.
finding strength and just autopilot and just keep on going. And keep working through your pain. Like none of that is strength. It is misery. It's misery for real. So just trying to find inner peace or inner peace and inner strength in what that looks like for me. I guess
Yeah.
I found that when I was going through my darkest moments as well. Yeah. Because I think we both went through a lot of stuff at the same time. We were
Hmm.
both like going through dark moments at the same time. Like mine just lingered on to when yours was. I was still
Hmm.
like grieving my situation, and then you was going through your transition. It was at the same time. I remember every day like talking like I'm sad too. I'm sad too.
You guys, our messages, our text conversation was so pitiful during this period
Oh
of
my
time.
goodness.
It was
Like,
just like, you still sad? Yeah, girl, I'm still sad. It's gonna be okay. Is it? I don't know.
oh my goodness. But yeah, it was just
Mhm.
finding that it was yeah, I didn't think about it as a moment, but like picking myself up and getting out of that sadness was
Mhm.
my newfound strength, I guess.
Mhm.
But I didn't see that as strength
Oh yeah.
when I was younger. I know I didn't.
I
Yeah.
think it's one of those hindsight is 2020 type of things too. Because a lot of the things that I do now, I think younger me would not understand it as being strength. Like she wouldn't clown it, she wouldn't be like you weak, but she wouldn't understand it as strength.
Yeah.
Like me being like having boundaries, she'd be like, it's just so much less annoying if you just didn't. You just did
Mm-hmm.
what they said. Like, why go through the process and have to talk to them about your feelings? It
Mm-hmm.
feels like this will be easier. I just feel like that's how she would feel.
It takes too much work.
Or even, yeah, the things like, okay, strength is, having a dream, knowing the dream sounds crazy and still working towards it anyway and not giving in. And then not only that, but like, and then feeling free and talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And because there's definitely things I've had hopes for before, but I used to always have this like fear of being open and honest about what I was working on,
Mm-hmm.
as if like people look at me like, you doing that? Hmm. Why would you think you can do that? Or why would you like, I always had this like fear of like having to explain it, I guess. And so I used to not like telling people, or I would not tell them the whole story or the whole thing. So instead of being like, I'm working on a podcast, I'm working on developing my own company, I'm working on developing blah, 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 blah. Instead of saying stuff like that, I would say, I just got a little side project, just something I do in my spare time, just something that makes me, girl, we don't really get into it. I just, I be talking about things with people. We really don't got to talk about it. It's really my friend's thing. It's not even my whole thing. Like that's how I would display. I would really talk myself down. And don't get me wrong, I'm still not a person that believes in telling everybody everything. I do think you need to keep some things to yourself. But now I refuse to think that the things that I want are foolish or silly or that I need to talk myself down about or that I'm not it's little or I'm not doing enough. I now pick up myself like, oh, you doing that. That takes that, oh, you exhausted, you still hold on to that. I'm up here working on big dreams. I'm up here working on blah, blah, blah. Like that's something I would have never done or even seen it as strength.
I agree. I think it's still something still something I'm working on as well. Just being confident in my goals and, like you said, not trying to explain them to everybody or defend them. Like, go ahead and defend what you want to defend and stop like holding so much in and not like standing up for yourself or just being present for yourself. Because but what are you like holding all this stuff in for? I'm still trying to figure that out, and I don't know if it's like an imposter syndrome type situation, like
For
hearing like
me, it definitely was.
hearing the doubts of friends, but they just might not know that side of you or
Mhm.
understand that side of you. But the thing is, you think those things, but for me, I think my friends, they might not know it, but they'll be willing to listen, willing to understand. So it's just knowing that and just standing up with what the things you're progressing in life and being open to understand, being open to let other people in about those things or having the strength to just be vulnerable about it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I think you hit on it. I think it is that imposter syndrome thing because
Mhm.
like you said, even like there's sides of you that not everybody knows. And I've been really thinking about that a lot, because that's been coming up a lot for me just lately, of like, you know what? There's a lot of people who don't know me in full, don't know me in whole. And I think about some of the people I struggle to let go of in life, which is not a normal thing for me. It's usually very easy for me to walk away from people. But there was two people in my life, it was hard. And it always came back to, well, because this is the only two people in the world you felt knew you in whole, that knew all sides of you. And I was, going through the process of like, okay, but what is so hard about that? Why is it so hard to let other people see the whole side of you? And I was actually working through something for a client, and I was thinking about it. And then I realized, like, oh, you can apply that to you, because it's a matter of, I don't know if it's safe for me to show that side of you. And I don't feel secure enough in our connection to show that side of you and handle the consequences of what showing that means. Will you act different? Will your perception of me change? Will our dynamics change? And of course, I don't think it's that for every single person, but I definitely was looking at it and was like, yeah, I do think that's a thing, where not on a conscious level, because of course we all love to say, nah, it's, I am who I am. You gonna take me, you gonna leave me, you gonna blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, girl, we say that, but also like, think about some of the things you didn't tell folks and why.
Yeah. Yeah.
Men, same thing. Why didn't you tell that woman you had 6 kids? Because you knew, like, there's a chance I tell you this information, it changes their perception. But like, also, ladies, it can be something as simple as like, okay, well, why did you tell that man that was your real hair? Like, because he'll think this is all me, 100% natural, beautiful, and just little things that we don't think is a big deal, but when you kind of start looking back on it, you might be like, oh dang, why did I feel the need to hide that? And sometimes I do think it comes back to that whole idea of, I don't know if it's safe for me to show this side. And I want to keep it, going back to control, I want to keep your perception of me within a certain range. So there's certain things I will say to you, certain things I can do with you, and blah, blah, blah. Now, also, there can be just different people bringing different stuff out of you. That's a thing as well. Because I definitely have people in my life who know a way more innocent side of me, and people who are on the other opposite end that's like, no, a whole different extreme side of me. And it's just different people, again, bring different stuff out of you. So don't think it's all imposter syndrome with everybody. But I know one thing that when I really think about when it comes to strength and it comes to redefining this for me, I recognize that like it's a privilege to even be in a space where I can choose to redefine strength. Because kind of like we were talking about earlier, some of it was just stuff that was passed on to us when we were kids. And it was passed on to us because our parents wanted us to be safe and keep safe. And they may, or our grandparents may, have grew up where they didn't really have the opportunity to really stop and think on emotional safety and redefining strength to make sure your emotional needs are taken care of. Because Maslow's rules of hierarchy, your first basic need of safety is security, like having a roof over your head, food to eat, clothes on your back. And so many of our parents, our grandparents grew up in that era where their parents were just struggling to make those basic needs. So the tipping point of Maslow's rules of hierarchy is self-actualization. And this is the spiritualism. This is that, self-awakening type thing. When you are worried about where you're going to lay your head, you're that is way more important than worrying about what your shadow self needs. And so a lot of us were raised by people who themselves that had to grow in that, or they were raised by people who had to grow in that. And it's why when I think back on it, it's like there is no judgment, because I get why you had to teach me this is what strength was, because that's what helped you survive.
And that wasn't even like on their forefront anything emotional, because they will even question some people. Some of the older adults question now, like, why you getting counseling? Like they didn't do good enough, or I didn't be strong enough. No, you provided, but it's still some things I have to. We didn't talk about mental. You didn't touch on that part at all. So it's just like they didn't lay that foundation out for us. So it's like we got to pick up and learn this new way of being strong or having strength because, yes, you did provide for us every way on the hierarchy of needs because I always had everything I needed, like a house and a car, food. I even did extra stuff like go on trips, but you still had to like figure out that mental piece as well. And I just think that it wasn't anything that they were taught or their parents before them was taught. So it's our job to
Mhm.
relearn and yeah, relearn it.
And I think that's why we're kind of having like this disconnect between our generation, our parents' generation. Like my parents are boomers, like that's their generation. And I think every generation thinks the one after them is weird and kooky and different. But like I feel like our generation has such a big disconnect is because we are the first generation to have the luxury of worrying about our mental health. And hopefully, a lot of us are taking advantage of that and doing just that, allowing us to look at what we think strength is and how is that helping or harming us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all we have for today's episode, guys. Hopefully, you enjoy. We will have a new episode next Thursday. You can find us on Instagram at She Wolf Alchemy. If you need to reach out to us, you can hit us up at She Wolf Alchemy Podcast at Gmail. Also, if you're listening to us and enjoying the episodes, head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. Leave us a review with some words. Other than that, guys, bye.
Bye.